Greetings, one and all, and welcome to the real, true episode 31 of the Creative Outlet Podcast. My name is Brandon, and the person who will say his name shortly is.
This is Tyler, aka Boom, for the technically second episode of my tenure here.
Yes, second episode of your tenure, the real episode 31. I don't know what it is, but apparently I can't read my own document that very clearly said at least a few times that was episode 30. I kept referring to it as episode 31 last time, but this is the real 31. I don't know if maybe I was just, thinking about like, oh, I'm making my 31 notes, or is it going to be 31? Like, I'm just so excited for that. But this is the real 31. Those watching the video version of the show, also, this is currently still the Creative Outlet Podcast, if I didn't say the name of the show yet.
You
Uh,
had not.
I had not. Well, it's good to get that within the first minute now that we're starting up here. Oh, man. Brain apparently does not work very well this early in the morning anymore. Those watching the video version, of course, we're bringing the video back. Uh, got to see the usernames. It's been changed, or at least the show name on there has been changed to include Boom here. Um, and I'm trying to increase the production game because I think we're going to be hopefully getting some bigger changes sooner than later here.
Yeah,
Uh,
we definitely been talking about just tentative name changes, what with me being added in and whatnot, and something to kind of spice it up a little bit. But we're still in that pre-planning stage, but we still wanted to get at least episodes out. So
right.
you
It,
know,
it's better. It's better to still be making stuff, and we can increase these along the way. Uh, today is January 3rd, 2025. So we're post Christmas. I can say finally, I have access to a brand new desktop computer, which is going to do wonders for production here, inevitably. But there's some issues with it. I don't know. I don't think I've really gone into detail with you about some of the issues with it, sir. Have I?
I don't think you've really talked too much about it. You like sent some messages about it like earlier, like this past month, but not like too specific of mesh or mentions, I guess, for
R-
lack of a better word.
sure. So for Christmas, I got this amazing, newly built PC and a nice little monitor to go with it. So I'm all but set up for my dream setup here that I've talked about a few times. On the left side of here, it's going to be this nice new computer. On the right side, I'm going to have an old school computer for like old software and stuff. But that one isn't really important to production here. It's the new one, but it's got a couple problems. But before I get into that, I want to be very very clear. Okay, I am super duper grateful for this. Like the fact that I could get this for Christmas is like a huge deal. I very deeply appreciate it. And really, one of the problems with it isn't necessarily a problem with the way with how it's built. It's a problem with like uh, another entity trying to do something to be like, oh, we're doing a favor for you, but really now it's screwing up things in the process. Because one of the problems is the Wi-Fi card in this, and now I have to sound super nerdy, like I'm sounding like I know all these technological terms, but it has an 802.11n Wi-Fi card, and which I'm sure means a lot to a ton of people out there. uh, but that's not really helpful right now because I've been trying to figure out this problem all week because it won't find my internet connection. So I'm recording this on the old computer, the old laptop here, because we're recording over the internet, are we not?
I would hope so, because if you're in my house, I have a bigger problem than you didn't tell me.
Right. So, uh, if we're recording on the internet, I need to be able to connect my computer to the internet. And so, in the middle of sometime in 2024, I get a notification from Spectrum. And if there's anyone who's across the country who's not familiar, I don't know if it's not that big a brand or not, but like for sure in Wisconsin, we've used like Charter Communications, later known as Spectrum, for years. And they upgraded my Wi Fi speed to 400 megabits per second. And so as I'm working through this and trying to figure it out, eventually I'm on the app there because that's how you just kind of sort through all how things work with it. And I see in the sports section, if you have a Wi-Fi connection that is faster than 300 megabits per second, you need an 802.11 AC Wi-Fi or better. 802.11 is for or 802.11n is for slower than that. So in the process of Spectrum trying to make my internet better, they made things harder.
Yikes.
Don't you hate when that happens?
I can't say I've had it happen personally, but
It's just like, oh man. Well, unfortunately, it's an easy fix, but like I said, it's just not something you could necessarily predict. But that'll get resolved in short order here. It's just a matter of swapping out one little card for another. So you know, there's certainly worse problems to have, but once I get this thing completely up and running and able to connect to the internet, I think this thing will be a veritable beast for increasing production here. If we could use like cameras, if we're talking about games, maybe having some footage in there for the video version at least. I mean, the audio version is going to stay pretty much the same. The audio you can't get much better with the audio version than what we're doing because it's just audio. It's just the sound. So I'm pretty pleased with how that is so far. I don't know about
mhm.
you.
I mean, I've only been here 2 episodes. I can't really give myself a giant opinion on this yet. Like, ask me when like we're 10 episodes in, then I'll have a better idea.
We'll revisit the question on episode 40 later this year, I suppose.
Don't you mean episode 41?
Yes, episode 41. We'll revisit it then. But for this year, unless or for this episode rather, unless there's any like small little news that's caught your eye that you'd want to discuss before we get rolling here, I was going to get into our topic rundown.
I don't have anything specific. No. I haven't really seen anything newsworthy on my end, but that's me personally. But I've been so wrapped in working on organizing my magic cards recently. Like the past 2 days, I probably have spent a good like God, it's probably like been a total of like at minimum like 20 hours or something like that the last 2 days, just organizing cards and pulling stuff out that I need and getting rid of stuff that I don't.
That's a
So
lot of
like
time.
Oh yeah. Well, when you've been playing a children's card game for like the better part of like 15 years almost, you acquire way more cards than you should. And this is like way more cards than even I had anticipated that I had, if I'm being honest.
Well, and cards are easy to acquire like that because they're so cheap. I mean, they're literally sheets of paper with some maybe a little extra printing on them, to make them a little bit nicer. But
Look, shiny cardboard make my brain go ooh.
well, and that's how it works for a lot of people. I'm not judging here. I'm just saying it's like it makes sense how it's so easy to acquire so many.
Well, at some point, like this isn't going to be for this episode, but down the road, I was planning to hopefully talk about the state of card games online at some point as a
Ooh.
future topic. Because, like, especially as of late, with like, okay, well, I guess a little precursor into this for a minute. But we've had like such a wide range of card games, especially lately, where it's like we've got Magic Arena Online, we've got Marvel Snap, and then we've got some of the more like OG ones that have still been kind of around, like Hearthstone and like even Legends of Runeterra, which is still clinging to life somehow. And this is coming from a constant Runeterra player, but um, just kind of like how some of these games like you know operate and how they've been successful for like in some cases like a decade plus and others like and I'm using Runeterra as the best example as like a game that has had such a hard time struggling with its identity that it has gone through more changes in like 5 years than I think I've ever seen in a card game whatsoever. But that'll be a topic for a different day. And it's a very personal one since I played almost every single one of the ones I'll be mentioning. But
Right.
it's
Whereas,
a yeah.
continue.
Oh, I was just gonna say like it's a very weird topic because of like how frequent I had played these, for so long, like in college and even post college, like there has been such a weird growth in it in some cases that some of them are definitely doing way better. And then there's others that it's like they just don't seem to fully know what they want to do yet, and they're years already in. So, just having that whole thought process as someone who's literally kind of scoped them out and kind of explored them a little bit to kind of get an idea of what they all do really has this like tendency of, you know, you kind of start to realize you have favorites over others, but I'll get more into that at a later date. I've already spent like way more time talking about this than I intended.
Well, hey, and like I think that's gonna be interesting because I don't play much of any card games like that. So that'll be a good opportunity for me to learn a lot about these, and I think that'll be a good discussion. Maybe with some stupid questions. Inevitably, there's going to be some when you don't know anything about a topic, but also with some that I would hope are going to make you in the audience think about, uh, your relationship with these card games and especially how to get new people into them because
Oh, fully agree. Like, as someone who got his girlfriend into Magic, who she has never played card games whatsoever up until this point, with the exception of like what you'd expect in, traditional card games, we'll say. Like, she's actually picked it up surprisingly well, and I actually am very impressed with, her understanding of the game. It's like it's not like she's like a full blown expert, but it's like you give her deck that she has, and she can run that deck backwards and forwards and not have to really ask too many questions. And like that's only after maybe about a year of playing. So like I'm impressed with the amount of growth that she's had as a player in that short amount of time as someone who's been playing for close to 15 years.
right, none of these games are super duper complicated, but if you're already a grown adult and you're used to your just basic suited card games, trying to do something totally different, I agree. There's got to be a learning curve there. So, and some people get it, some people don't, and the little variance in rules between each individual games, I'm sure, doesn't make it easy either. So, being able to pick up so many of those, I agree, is pretty impressive.
It's very bold of you to say that it's like, yeah, some of these card games are, pretty straightforward. I'm like, you have not once ever played Magic the
Well,
Gathering.
no. I'm saying straightforward. Like we're talking, your just your games where you use your diamonds and your hearts and your club kind of cards.
Oh,
Like
gotcha, yeah.
like it's not an easy game, but like the mechanics of poker are relatively simple depending on the version you're playing. It's just getting good at it that's a lot harder.
hmm And I will actually be kind of touching base a little bit on that later once we get to that point of the conversation, but we'll get in there later.
But yeah, I mean, any trading card game, whoo, tons of rules and they just change so often. Like there's a lot there.
Oh, without a doubt. All right, so what are we talking about today?
Yes, so it's the first episode of a new year, and I've had a tradition with these episodes. I like to do these wrap up episodes. It's sort of the traditional, like, let's look back on the games that we played in the previous year, highlight them, sort of like it's kind of like the show where they give awards to games. I think you might have talked about it last time. It's like a game awards kind of thing, except we're going to actually focus on talking about why we enjoy the games as opposed to mostly doing trailers and advertisements, which don't get me wrong are interesting. But if it's a game awards, it should be mostly about the awards. You know,
hmm
not calling anyone out here, but and the way that we've done that, or that I've done this traditionally, is I have three major categories for games. And in my case, I have some 2023 games to discuss because 2024 was kind of the lost year for this show. We had a lot of plans to get started this or sometime earlier in the last year, but like stupid life keeps getting in the way. But it seems like we've gotten to a point where life is getting less in the way now, and hopefully we can do things more consistently. But we have three categories to go through: a release of the year, and for me that refers to like This is the brand new game that came out within the year that was the best one that you played, or the one you most enjoyed for whatever reason, a personal game of the year. So that opens it up to so many more options because it's just like, well, what'd you play that year that you liked the best? What's the best thing you played? And then one I don't know if I've coined the term necessarily, but one that I found interesting, or at least wanted to discuss, was this idea of the backlog MVP. And that's just saying, like, man, I kept thinking about, like, I want to play this, but I just never got to it. So I need to get it on my list. Although I will say there is some irony in my past choices in that I don't know how many of these I've actually gone back and ended up playing in the following year. But so, you know, there's definitely some questionability with that award, but it's one that I value highlighting, and I've got choices for all these categories in 2023. I know you've got a couple for one of the categories in 2023, and we have completely filled in the chart for 2024. So,
Yeah,
uh,
I figured like given that like for me, I don't remember a lot of the stuff that I played from 23. So, I probably won't have too much to talk about. I'll talk about a few of the personal games that I did beat that year and what I had thought and all that. My hope is that we can kind of I won't say rush through it, but like we'll get through 2023 quick and then we can get more time to last year, given that, that's more fresh in my mind at least.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's what'll happen. But I had this list already planning for it when we were gonna start sometime last year. So it's just like I gotta share these, and at least two of the games on here for release of the year were like huge ones for me personally. So let's get started on those. I had three nominees for release of the year, three brand new games that I wanted to highlight, and those included Sonic Superstars, which came out toward the end of the year, Super Mario Brothers Wonder, which I talked about a good number of times on this show. Like there hadn't been a new 2D Mario game, like a proper brand new one in, geez, 11 years. Because the last one before that would have been, well, I mean, I guess it depends on how you'd classify New Super Luigi U, but New Super Mario Brothers U was 2012, and it took until 2023 to have just a brand new 2D Mario game from the ground up. But the one that I decided to have win that year was another one that I was super incredibly excited for, and that was Pikmin 4. Uh, there's only four mainline games in the Pikmin series, and I started with three, the original three on the Wii U, not the deluxe version on the
Mm.
Switch. And I just, man, I really, really enjoyed Pikmin 4. But the thing with it that I noticed is I didn't really have a ton of desire to go back to it and replay it. But the moments along the way when I was playing it the first time, I found incredibly enjoyable. It proved to me things about, because it takes some of the aspects of, because something that they talked about in interviews previously before the game came out is like there were Pikmin 1 people and Pikmin 2 people. And do you know much about the structure of the game, or like how much background do I need to give you here to kind of explain what that means?
I mean, I've beaten the first two games, so I get what you're getting at here.
Great.
Because I think I unironically beat both of them when I was in my last year in my apartment with my roommate because he happened to have both the OG GameCube. And I remember personally liking, I think it was two more when I played because I liked having less of that, I guess, that time limit that Pikmin 1 had. I remember being very stressed playing Pikmin 1. Loved both, but like one definitely was a lot more relaxed overall for me.
So for me, it was kind of the opposite, because I agree with you. Like Pikmin 1 is on paper a very stressful game, but I think you kind of figure it out. And for me, it helps like that I had the experience of playing 3 first, and then going through 2 and getting to 4 eventually. But I think what 4 does is it tries to marry the two as best as it can, because it returns to having the dungeons the caves of Pikmin 2. Those come back in 4. But it does away with all the aspects of those in Pikmin 2 that I didn't care for. So
Mm.
really, like, the big reason that I chose, well, okay, there's two big reasons I chose Pikmin 4 as like my release of the year in 2023. Number one, it proved to me that Pikmin 2 could work for me. Because the things that I don't like about Pikmin 2, in the caves in particular, are there's a lot of traps. There's a lot of like, I'm going to go into this room, and suddenly now there's boulders falling on me from the sky out of nowhere. And there are enemies running around with bomb rocks that just come out of nowhere that are going to kill me. And 4 doesn't have any of that. So you can have a lot more time to like, you know, soak in the what you're doing, instead of being like, "Oh my goodness, this is suddenly like there's just things coming out of nowhere and making things like needlessly more difficult as opposed to more challenging," you know?
Yeah.
Because walking around and suddenly losing 10 to 20 Pikmin in my squad because, you know, there's a volatile Dweevil with a bomb rock coming right behind me that I can't see and exploding is not challenging, that's just annoying. Okay? That just, screws a lot of things up for you. Whereas 4 doesn't really do that. It's got some trolly moments. Like there's a moment I can think of in the final cave of the game that's kind of like that, but they don't make that like a constant thing throughout. And they do try to emphasize the more time management-y Pikmin 1 type of stuff more than 2 did. Okay, you have more time in the above ground, and there's more areas, and uh they and there's the Dandori challenges that they do as it, which are pretty much just an homage to the challenge mode in Pikmin 3 that was pretty much my favorite part of that game. So incorporating that into the campaign, even though I didn't think those levels were as good as what 3 had, made the game very enjoyable to me. That's not to say it's perfect. I have to sound a concern with many others that there's a limit that you can only have up to 3 types of Pikmin out at once with you. So, in 2, you could have, like, reds and blues and yellows and white and purple, and you could have all 5 of those out with you. Now you can only choose 3 at once, and there's, like, 7 or 8 types of Pikmin, which makes things kinda like,
I was gonna say because I remember was it two had five was like the most that I had played up until that point. And I know three added some new ones. I don't know anything really about four personally, like from firsthand experience at least, but
so you've got in 4, you've got red, blue, yellow, purple, and white return. 3 added rock and winged, and then 4 added ice Pikmin during the day. And then there's certain areas like because there's these new night expeditions, and you can take some of these in caves through a particular method. But they add these glow Pikmin, which are kind of like the Bulbmin in 2. Because those you could only find in caves, but they're immune to everything except for like being eaten or crushed. Because I would think if I was eaten, I would probably die too. If I was eaten by some giant creature,
if you're
uh,
not, it becomes a Lord Farquaad and Shrek situation, I think.
yeah, that'd be kind of weird, a little unrealistic. Uh, but the point is like, okay, I can kind of see what they're going for in the sense that it's like, uh, 8, sometimes 9 types at once is a lot to manage.
Hmm.
And you get the addition of Ochi, your little space dog that you get to ride around and command as well. So it's like that's a lot to manage. So I understand what they're going for. Like, okay, let's limit you down to 3 types. That way things are a little bit simpler. It's not like you only have 7 or 8 of one type at once because you're still capped at 100 by the end of the game. And actually, you only get to start having a maximum of 20. That's a big change. You only get to have 20, but then you find because you grow Pikmin in the onion, right? And you
Hmm.
find these items called flarlicks, which are just like they look like garlics, right? And what those do is every time you find one up until you hit 100, you can take 10 more Pikmin with you. Add 10 more to your squad. So you start with 20, and then you get to get 30, then you get to get 40 up until you finally hit the cap, right? But I kind of wish, like, as you got more of those, that instead of just every single time it adds 10, like a couple of the times it was like they'll let you take more types out with you, because I think there's a good middle ground here. The three type limit I think is too restricting, but I can understand eight being too much. It should have been maybe like cap it at five, like it was in two, or cap it at well, actually, it ended up being five in practice in Pikmin 3 because in the campaign, purple and white Pikmin weren't there. They were only in the side modes. But there was a map where you had all seven of those in the side mode. So I'm just saying, like, I think there's a way they could have done things to expand that a little bit more. But just overall, really, really good game. But the second reason I had to give it to four is because I just couldn't quite bring myself to put Super Mario Brothers Wonder as my release of the year. And very similarly, I deeply, deeply enjoyed that game too on the first playthrough, but I felt no desire once I was done with it to really go back to it in any meaningful way right away, like just to keep playing stages for funsies.
Hmm.
And one of the first three games I ever played during my life was Super Mario World, and I could pop that game in the Super Nintendo or on some, like on NSO or in the Game Boy Advance or whatever, and play pretty much any stage and be happy playing that. So to
Right.
me, the fact that I don't I mean, I have somewhat similar experiences with a lot of the other Mario games, and I'm sure over time my position on this will shift, but I should have been able to, even after beating the game, still be like, I wanna go back and keep playing more stages, especially when they do all these weird and different things, and, it's like you can pick any character you want, and you have stages where, like, you get this wonder effect, and suddenly you're like walking on the wall in the background. It's more like it's become a top-down game, and you get to transform into enemies, and it does all this different stuff and new original things for 2D Mario. I should have been like, once I was done playing the game, like, man, I just want to keep playing it. So I consider that a pretty big failing in the case of Mario Wonder. And there's something to be said for the two in that, with like Pikmin 4 is a much longer game. So the fact that I don't really want to go back to it immediately is a little bit more understandable, because it's like, okay, I spent 40 hours compared to, like, it only took me 15ish hours to beat Mario Wonder. So it's like I should feel some more desire to keep, like, squeezing some juice out of this fruit, so to speak.
Hmm.
So Uh, again, both games really, 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 really good, but I just couldn't quite get there. And Sonic Superstars also, it's a game that I started up a little bit, and I think I didn't get a ton of time to play because it came out in late November of 23, and the little I did play, I enjoyed, but I could tell, like, there would definitely, because there'd be some issues with multiplayer in it, because they try to be like, this is the first four-player 2D Sonic game. Also, what are the odds of two episodes in a row I'm discussing 2D Sonic on here?
I
uh,
mean, it was bound to happen. We had like kind of similar topics coming down. Now, if you go five in a row, we'll be talking a little bit.
yeah, that'd be a little weird. I can't imagine I'm going to bring it up again next time. Uh, but I just
You
had
say
too many
that
times.
now, but like it could still happen.
You're absolutely right, but I don't think it will. I know what I want to talk about next time already, and it has nothing to do with a certain Sega Hedgehog. Um, but it's just like I can see they don't really pull back the camera in the way they need to. Um, it's still got a lot of those same problems that I listed last time with those 2D Sonics, only now it's like, okay, there's no coins. Now you have infinite lives, so that works better, but it's still like the special stage isn't it's kinda like all the other ones. But the big one that I noticed, the bosses are, like, notoriously difficult. Like, the first one, I just kept dying every single time, a bunch of times in a row to this one pit along the way because it's one of those, like, chasing boss fights, and it's just
Oh,
like,
yeah, yeah.
you'd think one of these times I could get past it and just stop dying to this pit, but it's like, I swear to God, I'm pressing the jump button the time that I need to, and to me, that just kinda seemed like, this is not a good omen for how the rest of this is gonna go, so, I didn't feel confident giving it my release of the year just based on, like, I haven't played this enough, but based on what I have played, there's definitely some, like, I don't know about some stuff here. As
I
far
mean,
as
yeah, I was gonna say, I think that's valid because it's like you can't really have a hard like I can sell this as the release of the year for me if you've only played like maybe a handful of hours tops.
Right, and that's an issue I've run into a lot of these years on here, is it's just like, I struggle I look at my library, I'm looking at the games sitting to me to the left, and it's like, how many of these are truly brand new games, and I played them in the year they came out,
Yeah.
you know? I honest to goodness wish I had that more often, but it just seems like in general there's so many more collections and remakes nowadays that it's just hard to sometimes find the time to do that because it's like, "Oh, I would rather play, I don't know, something that's staring me in the face here that's a remake that I played one year. I would rather play man, I just saw one and I lost it. Well, fine, I'll use the example. I'd rather play Sonic Origins Plus because I just want to play those particular games, but those are 30-year-old games. So it's not a new game. Uh, but that's fortunately why I have the next category, which is my personal game of the year, and I nominated 5 games for this. F-Zero 99. Oh my goodness, completely out of nowhere, F-Zero is alive again.
That's a very loose term, but at least there's at least a pulse.
I honestly, that's a lot better than I think initially people were gonna give it credit for.
Mhm.
And considering we had 20 years of absolutely nothing, I will take at least a crumb as opposed to getting absolutely nothing, you know?
I was gonna say because like, isn't the last like actual F-Zero thing like?
Before
An,
that is GX.
I'm pretty
Is
sure it's
the
like an
last.
arcade cabinet. I think.
Well, AX, yes, came out with
Yeah.
GX. So, I
Okay. Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
the last game before that was F-Zero Climax on the Game Boy Advance, but it only came
Terrible
out in
name.
Japan.
Terrible
Yeah,
name.
okay, yes, I know. It has more to do with plot reasons as to why, because it's the climax of a plot thread from a previous game in it, but I digress. I'm just saying, like, I kinda went into it being like, "Oh my god, F-Zero's alive," and sure, is it mostly the SNES content? Yes, but having the 99 format, in my opinion, really changes how you play F-Zero. There's a
Mhm.
like, because already even with just the 30 racers and, like, GX and an F-Zero X on the N64, that is some chaos. Now you triple that and add 9 more on top of it, and there's even more chaos going into it. And I think there's something interesting in that, like, you're bringing mechanics from those later games into the 2D SNES style, right?
Mhm.
It's not just that you can move side to side. You actually do get to attack players, and I find that interesting. And if it's popular and people play it, maybe we can get a proper new game, which would be great. So I was just like, I was really I what I did play I enjoyed, but for me it's just nice to see that, like you said, there's at least a pulse as opposed to nothing on the horizon at all and everything is sad.
Mhm.
The next game I chose for here was Dokapon Kingdom Connect. Now, have you ever played Dokapon Kingdom before? Have you heard of it at all?
Heard I own it. I own the OG Wii version.
Well, never mind. I guess that makes it kind of needless. I did not know you owned that game.
It's
Un
not one like I would talk about like an obscene amount in my collection of stuff that I own. It's one of those like to kind of sidebar a little bit. I bought this game on an impulse, and it wasn't because it was like I saw it and desperately said I needed it. It was I was buying a PS4 Pro off of Facebook, and the guy also messaged me, just happened to say, hey, so I have this Wii game, Dokapon Kingdom, I'm selling if you want it. And I had just watched the Game Grumps play through it, where Dan basically is just absolutely ticked off the entire time because he doesn't get the mechanics of it. And I'm like, I kind of want to try this out just to say that I've tried it out. Next thing I know, I own this game now $100 less than I intended, but I did get both of them that day, and I still got to try it out. And it's not as complicated as they were making it out to be, but it is definitely a lot more complicated than it lets on, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean it's an RPG that's also a board game, which I
Hmm.
mean there are like the first RPGs were tabletop games, but those are kind of distinct from board games. And this the version I have here is the Connect version, which is just a re-release on. I think there's a PS4 version, but it might be a Switch exclusive. And that's another one that's like just like I didn't get a ton of time to play it, but it's one that I really want to try out because I adore the idea of like it's an RPG that's Mario Party. I mean, it's not actually Mario Party because that's kind of really oversimplifying it, but it's you're kind of marrying those two worlds, and I find that incredibly interesting. Uh, and I think it'd be a really fun time with the particular right group of friends because it's an incredibly long game if you play the proper campaign. But, it's also kind of a role playing game. So that's to be expected. The little bit I did get to play of it, though, I enjoyed. I added Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on the list. I played a ton of that in 2023, especially as the DLC tracks kept coming out for it. So it's like I'm kind of obligated. If I played a ton of this game, clearly I enjoyed it. I don't know what hasn't been said about how great of a game Mario Kart 8 is, particularly the deluxe version. So I'll just kind of leave it there. But I mean, just tons and tons of fun with that. Fortune Street. I started the year of 2023. I swear to goodness, probably for the first 3 months, just playing tons of that game. Uh, have you and obviously you've played Dokapon. Have you played Fortune Street though?
No, I know of it because if I remember right, that's a Wii U game, isn't it?
Well, that one's an original Wii game.
Okay.
The only one that ever came out in the West is the game on the Wii, but it's had versions on tons of different systems. Like it started out as an NES game, that had a Super Nintendo version, then it had a PlayStation version, then it had a couple PS2 and PSP versions. But it's kind of serendipitous how we got this game because it's like Nintendo just needs one more first party release at the end of 2011 for the Wii. And it's like, well, there's this game coming out and it's got Mario in it. And we're not making anything for the Wii right now with Mario. So it's like, e- considering we've never gotten any of the other games in the series, it's almost like a super happy accident that this game even came over to the West. But man, it's so good. Uh, it's got some annoyances. Don't get me wrong. It's not exactly what I would describe as a perfectly designed board game video game, but I deeply enjoy it because it's like you're taking some ideas of a game like Monopoly, but you get to choose where you move around the board instead of it being a square the entire time, and you get a little bit more strategy in things like there's a stock market in the game. So they're groups of properties that go in a district, kind of like Monopoly in that sense, because you've got like your red properties and your blue properties, and they're all grouped together in a little area. But you invest money into them, and you invest in the stock of that district, and that increases the value of those. And you can't just invest in your own stuff, like you can invest in the properties and districts that are completely owned by other players, so you can mooch off of their success, which is hilarious, right? I mean, it's how the business works in reality, but uh you're just you're trying to win the game by reaching a certain level of net worth, and just selling. I mean, you're not really selling products, but it's like when players land on your properties, you make money. When you make investments in the stock market, you make money. There's an arcade space, and then the Japanese version was a casino space, and you can tell because they're kind of casino-y games. There's like betting on Dragon Quest slime races. There's a slot machine. So I mean, it's pretty clear they're meant to be more like casino-y type games, but I had a ton of fun with it. I was playing it for like weeks on end, so it's another one where I was kind of obligated to mention it here. But my winner for personal game of the year of 2023 was coincidentally, I see, one of the games that you nominated as your personal game of the year for 2024,
Hmm.
and that is Ghost Trick Phantom Detective. Oh my god, it's such a good story.
It's such a like for me at least. I was gonna kind of go into it when we got more into the 2024 stuff, but for me, it was one of those games that like I am like a huge fan of like mystery stuff a lot of the time, or like even like some sort of like thriller suspense kind of thing. And this game with its story was such an unexpected like enjoyment, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's like not saying that it was going to be a bad game by any stretch when I picked it up, but like I didn't expect it to be this good either.
No. So I mean, it came out in what, early 2011 on the DS. So it's a game that totally passed by a ton of people, and
Mhm.
it's finally re-released in 2023. And at that point, I mean, I'd played, starting with his Ace Attorney stuff, I'd played pretty much every single game that Shutakami had made or was like involved in some way to that point. And Ghost Trick was the big one that I still hadn't played. So it's like, okay, it's perfect. It's coming out again on new systems and on PC. Like, it was the perfect time to play it. And, you know, there were definitely moments along the way that I found frustrating with certain puzzles where it's just like, I don't quite see how this works. But I I don't know that you're ever going to see another game like Ghost Trick again, even without the story piece of it too. You're just it's
Mhm.
such a unique idea to be like, you are going to move around certain objects in like the play field that you see, and you get to manipulate them, all for the purpose of trying to prevent a murder from happening. Like, who comes up with that idea? That's so creative.
Like it's funny because like I remember there was a game years ago that it wasn't the same thing, but it was the same kind of premise of you're a ghost trying to solve your own murder. And it was like sole suspect. What was it? Hang on. I gotta look this up.
I remember what you're talking about, but that's like a more traditional like third person adventure game, isn't it?
Yeah, Murdered Soul Suspect. That was the one I was thinking of because I remember being excited to see it, and then I saw like I think it was like the reviews were saying it was kind of Like this was like 3 years after Ghost Trick came out, basically 3 or 4 years afterward, and like it just was kind of like all over the board a little bit. Like it wasn't saying like it was bad by some people, but like some of these people were saying that this is like the definition of middle of the road for a lot of people. But then Ghost Trick, like 3 or 4 years prior to that, gives us this story that is so absurd and I loved every second of it. Like I wanted to keep playing, even in the days where it would be like, no, I need to actively go and sleep now. But it's like as soon as one chapter's done, and then it was like almost every chapter they give you that little hook of like, oh, but then this gets revealed. I'm like, well, I have to find out what happens now.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. Yep. Like, I mean, you get into the second chapter and it's like, "Oh my god, I can talk to the dog. I can talk to the best dog in all of video games,
Hmm.
Missile, the Pomeranian." And I will not hear any arguments as to any other potential better dogs. Missile is the goat of the dogs, okay? About the only flaw with Ghost Trick is you don't get to pet Missile, but, I mean, not
I
every
mean,
game.
you are a ghost, so that does make it a smidge difficult.
I guess, but that if you added that, I mean, we're talking about an 11 out of 10, right? uh, but yeah, I mean, it's like it really takes advantage of the fact that you are a ghost because
Hmm.
people talk about all the time. I do not personally believe in ghosts in real life. That's a whole kind of separate can of worms. But it's like you hear people talk about when they see like a light flicker. Oh, I see that grandma or whoever is paying us a visit or whatever. So taking that premise and turning it into a puzzle, essentially, where a ghost is real and is manipulating the world, is genius because it's taking this very real idea and using it for a creative method, you know.
Right, right.
Uh, and I don't really want to spoil much story stuff here because it's just
No,
so good.
I'm in the same boat on that one because like I feel like that is the type of game where it's like you just tell people you have to play this. Like
Hmm.
just experience it the first time. Like I will be honest, when I played it this past year, it probably is now in my top 5 games. It's close to top 3. It's like probably number 4 on my list now. It's
I
like
don't I don't know where it's in my list of like all games for sure yet. Because I like obviously like there's some very different games. It's hard to put like when you have a list where like if I were to put it in there, Super Mario World and Ghost Trick are like two very vastly different types of games, but they're still some of my favorites.
right, and like, because for me, like, I just really have a lot of sentiment. Kind of going back to what we talked on the last episode, like, my top 3 games are probably Legend of Zelda: Twilight Princess, Persona 5 Royal, and Hades. And then Ghost Trick comes in and absolutely is in that like discussion of like, yeah, these are games that I would love to just gush about as much as humanly possible. The only thing that's kind of an issue for me on Ghost Trick, and this isn't like bad, this is like more personal on this. Um, I will never be able to replicate that feeling of the first time playing through it, because that was where I think so much of the reason it's up there for me is because it literally was like the first thing in such a long time where um when I was going through the story and I would be like expecting like the traditional beats of like your typical murder mystery type of thing, and then all of a sudden it just, you know, at the very end of almost every time that you did a chapter, something new happens, and I never got it right. I expected what was expecting it to be, and it kept subverting expectations every single time to the very end. And I remember like when it gets to the end, I literally like I had the game on the same screen for like a good 7 minutes with my head in my hands, just flabbergasted.
Processing what you just read or what you just saw, right?
Like
It's
it
full of moments like that.
Yeah, and, like, I'm not gonna get into the details of it, but, like, I just remember sitting there, and I was dumbstruck because I did not see that being the thing that happens in this, and I could not believe that it's, like, this entire time where I'm thinking it's like, "Oh, yeah, I know exactly what's happening." It goes, "Nope, now it's this. Nope, now it's this. Nope, now it's this," and I'm like, "This is incredible." It's like, I don't know what's gonna happen next.
And it's all without jumping the shark, too. You
I
never get
mean,
to the point where it's like, I don't know about that one. I don't know
like
about that.
like I think part of what makes Ghost Trick as good as it is that it has this whole idea of we're already at the beginning with this absurd premise of a ghost that can possess items that's solving their own murder. Like, you start this at square one, and it is so hard to jump the shark because everything else sounds like it still either works or is just, huh, yeah, okay, we'll go with it. And I think
Yeah.
that's why like Ghost Trick does it so well is that it really leans into the absurdity of it while still trying to give it this plot with characters that have good motivations. They have like really good decisions that are going through the course of the entire thing, and it like never feels misplaced. Like being absurd somehow kept it more grounded and semi like I won't say realistic because like that's not the word, but it's like everything's believable. And I think that is always the hardest thing to do sometimes when it comes to like any type of mystery in general. Cause like for me, like I am a big fan of Castle. I've watched that show probably like front to back like 8 times since it came
Wow.
out.
That's a
Like,
lot.
it's like a once a year thing for me, basically. I think last year was actually the first time in a long time I have not watched really any of it, and that was more just because I was so trying to get more games off my list that it was kinda hard to find time to go and sit down and be like, "Oh, I wanna watch, my DVDs of Castle," which dates me a little bit, but that's aside the point. But Castle had this problem at a certain point, and like I really enjoyed it when it was on TV and it was brand new, and like you would guess, why like somebody is committing this murder in this episode. And I remember my mom and I actually had a bet going where we had this game essentially where we would guess who the person was in the first 5 minutes. And we did this for the entirety of season two. And I forget how many episodes it was. It was like 22, 24, something like that. And I got it every time except for 2 episodes.
It's that
Now,
predictable, huh?
that's kind of what I was getting at is that like because Castle has a really good way of setup when it comes to how these like murders are done, the motivations behind why they happen, and they really know how to like build up the case for a 40-minute episode. Like, it's not that they're doing it bad by any stretch. The problem was there was a formulaic take that I figured out early on, and it was something that you would kind of expect once you see it. And that was it was almost always the person who had the least amount to gain when you first meet them.
Mm, yeah.
So, there was one episode specifically. I think it was actually the first season's episode. And this was one of the few that I got wrong, but it was only because of a cop out with it. Um, but there's two separate murders that they're investigating. There are no connections whatsoever to the two people. At least for the longest time, they cannot put a connection together. And they bring out the two suspects they expect to be the murderers for those people, but they have airtight alibis. They did not murder the people that they were connected to. Like one was a therapist, and another was a like just some older guy who had like this really good apartment. And the motivations for them were um, the husband was cheating on the wife and he wanted her out of the picture. And then the I think it was like the in-law of the other guy wanted this apartment that was like rent controlled and stuff like that. Like there were valid reasons for what it was. But because of the time of the murders, they have airtight alibis and they're not, the people that did it. But it turns out at the end of the episode, and spoiler alert for anybody who has not watched Castle since the 2010s or whenever it came out, you're very overdue, but that's not the point. Um, the plot twist was they committed each other's murders.
Ooh.
So what they ended up finding out was the people who did the murders actually shared the same route on the ferries, and they started talking. and they both were having their gripes, and they formulated a plan where the in-law killed the dude's wife in his or in her office, and the dude killed the other guy, and like they have airtight alibis for the murder they were expected to commit, but they don't have an alibi for the other one. And that's where they got
Mm.
him on. Like, it was a really good episode, and it's like one of the best ones that they probably had that season because of the fact that it was such a unexpected twist. It's like, because they're literally sitting there like, we know these people killed somebody, but we cannot figure out why we can't prove it. And it was because they were looking at it from the opposite side. And like the rest of the season after that just kind of becomes formulaic once you find out, oh, this person has like no connection or like a very little connection or doesn't have like any reason to want them murdered. And suddenly now they do once they learn more and more and more. And it turns out there's this thing where uh, that was not revealed until about 30 minutes into the episode. And it was like the same thing for like 20 some episodes of that season. And like even to some degree, like as the show progressed too, it was still pretty formulaic in that aspect. Like, it's not saying that they're poorly written. It's not saying they're bad. It's just that you clearly see it once you notice the trend. And like Ghost Trick never gave me that. Nowhere in that entire thing did it give me this whole idea of like I know what's coming next. I did not know it was coming next. Anytime I thought I knew it was coming next, I was blatantly wrong. And it is almost like it was purposefully done like that. Cause like there's a point where like we might be getting into a small spoiler territory, but this is going to be an early one, so I think I can kind of get away with it.
Sure.
There's a point where there's a guy in prison, and you have to save him from dying. But like you discover once you save him, he knows your character because he painted your face at the very end, but you have no idea who this guy is, but he clearly knows you.
And you're just like, why does he know me? That's
Right.
weird.
And it's like what starts as like kind of this string of unconnected events slowly becomes this elaborate web where like one point may not be directly connected to it, but it's all interconnected in some capacity, and that's what Ghost Trick did really well for me, and that's why I probably like that as my personal game of this past year, probably for a lot of the same reasons that you did. So like, okay, I'll get off my soapbox on this because I could talk about this episode all day on how good Ghost Trick is. Just go play it. It's so good.
I don't care what system you have. I don't care if you have a PlayStation 4 or 5, an
It is
Xbox
on
One.
Steam, it is
Yep.
on Switch, it
Yep.
is on how many other systems probably because of the remake. There's no excuse to not go get it. And Steam will probably have it on sale for like 20 bucks at some other point. You can get it then. I bought it I think full price when I got it, and I still don't think I wasted the money. I thought it was great.
And here's the best part. Let's say you don't want to spend any money on it yet. You just haven't been convinced. We're just singing the praises of how this is the most amazingest Shu Takumi game, except I think it's going to be second place for me just under Trials and Tribulations. Trials and Tribulations is so darn good, and I like Ace Attorney a ton. But oh man, Ghost Trick is so close. There's a demo of it on all those systems with the first 2 chapters. If you don't want to put a single cent down on this yet, you can still experience the first 2 chapters of the game for free and see what we're talking about.
Hmm.
And oh man, I'm telling you, y'all won't be disappointed, folks. You will not be disappointed. It is phenomenal. I don't know that it's possible to overhype this game because it's a darn good.
All right, so let's move on to the backlog MVP because you have some very interesting names on here that I'm looking at, and I have only heard of 2 of them.
All right. Yeah. So 2023 backlog MVP. So I've got 5 games on here. Kaze and the Wild Masks. That's a game that I bought in 2023 when I had my very interesting trip to see my aunt and uncle in Pennsylvania. It's supposed to be very heavily inspired by Donkey Kong Country. And, I already brought up one of the first 3 games I played, Super Mario World. Guess what another one is? Donkey Kong Country. So it's just like, oh
Mhm.
man, I really want to play that. Guess what? I still haven't played almost 2 years later. So it's on my list. I'll get to it eventually. Murder by Numbers. Is that one of the ones you haven't heard of?
Yeah, the only 2 that I've heard on this has been Pikmin 1 and Tetris Effect Connected.
Okay. Murder by Numbers, I think you would probably really enjoy. Uh, Little side point, the music for that game, done by the same guy who did the music for Ace Attorney 1 and Ghost Trick Phantom Detective, like the original DS music for that game. So it's very Ace Attorney inspired. And so you play as this woman who is an actress on, funnily enough, another connection to what you were just talking about with Castle, a
Mhm.
procedural crime drama. And so I've only played the first two cases. I know for sure I've beaten the first one. Um, but it plays like an Ace Attorney investigation. You have to find the person who's done it. But the way that you go about like collecting some of the evidence and like learning things is through these. I don't know what term for the puzzle you're more familiar with, but it's through these Picross puzzles, like in Mario's Picross, or they're known as nonograms otherwise. It's that type of puzzle where you have a column of numbers on the left and up above, and you have to use logic to fill in the squares, and it inevitably it makes a picture at the end.
I genuinely can't believe that I've never heard of this game. This came out, like, 5 years ago now almost.
And if I recall, the developers behind it ended up making another very famous game after the fact, but I want to confirm. Um, it's not coming to me what is the game that they made after it, because it was made by Mediatonic, who then went on to make. Oh yeah, that's what they made. It's by the developers who made Fall Guys.
Yeah, I was gonna say I recognize the name.
Literally, like they make Murder by Numbers, and then the next game they release is Fall Guys. So, uh, but yeah, I mean, just really good game. It's not the same quality as you get out of a full big Ace Attorney game, but you go around, you talk to characters, collect evidence, and inevitably you figure out who has committed the crime. Tetris Effect Connected. I barely played that a little bit in 2023. I played it. That's one that I did go back to in 2024 and played it a couple more times. It's just Tetris at the end of the day, but it's kind of different. It's got this cool aesthetic. I think it's really interesting. But I like Tetris, and I can never have too many copies of Tetris. Although I am still a little disappointed in myself for inevitably caving at one point and having both Puyo Puyo Tetris and Puyo Puyo Tetris 2 on the Switch when those games are incredibly similar. But I digress. But I'm just saying Tetris is fun and I like Effect and the music in it is super darn good. They really pull you in for sure on the first stage because it's a very heavily like music based game. Not in the sense that it's like, you have to play to the music, but they really try to wrap you in the aesthetic. And, I haven't played a ton of VR games, but it's one that I would be interested in trying out in VR because that's a lot of how it was first pitched was around this idea of like the Tetris effect. You still see these blocks falling down in the world around you after the fact. So I would think doing it in VR kinda gets what that's like. And I
Mhm.
listed on here yet again because I nominated this in 2022, and yet I didn't play it again in 23, and I didn't play it again in 24, and it's Freedom Planet 2, which is the sequel to the original 2014 independent game. And I seriously can't believe I'm bringing this up again, but it's largely inspired by, drumroll please, classic 2D Sonic. So you're right, I brought it up again. But what I liked about the original, because like I got the original in 2016 and it came out of nowhere, something I really loved, because wouldn't you know, it fixes a lot of things that I don't like about 2D Sonic. There's no special stages of any kind, just go through the adventure and you play the game. And one of the big innovations in it that I like that uh, stops breaking the pace that you sometimes have in 2D Sonic. You don't get hurt by enemies unless they're actively like doing an attack animation on you. You can walk by an enemy and you won't get hurt. And I love that. And people love the sequel, is my understanding, but I just could not get into it. And I'm hoping I want to try it again, and maybe it'll click with me the second time because I want to see what people are seeing with it. But I've had some problems with it that I'm just like, I don't know. I just don't enjoy it as much. But my winner, somehow this series won 2 awards this year. The backlog MVP winner was Pikmin 1. Because at that point I'd played 2, 3, and 4. Well, I got to play 1. I mean, I just have to. It's at that point. And I actually played it in 2024. I played Pikmin 1 and I enjoyed it. And I don't know. I'm not fully set in stone on what my ranking for the series is, but I think I'm going to go 3, 4, 1, 2 personally. That's what I got to go with.
That's fair.
Would you like to go over your few 2023 entries now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to spend too much time on it. I mean, feel free to ask if you have questions, but
Mhm.
I only really had like 3 personal games from like 23 that I could think of, and that was Marvel's Midnight Suns, Potionomics, and Remnant 2. Um, but I loved all of these for very different reasons. If I had to pick which one was my favorite from that year, it's probably Remnant 2. Potionomics is close, but Remnant 2, I've just really liked the series as a whole. Like Remnant from the Ashes is like one of my favorite games from like that third person shooter perspective. Cause like I don't know how much you know about the Remnant series.
I have not played any of them.
So they're effectively like Dark Souls with guns.
All right.
The entire thing kind of has this whole plot of there's a thing called the root where it effectively has taken over multiple dimensions, including the one on Earth. And because of that, it's kind of this apocalyptic type of setting now. But because it's also got like these fantasy elements when you go to these other specific places in the game, you see like its effect on these other things. But what I like about it is that every playthrough is procedural.
Mm.
So you can essentially never get the same items twice, potentially. You can even run through the worlds differently because you may go to one first and then you may end up at that same one like near the end of another playthrough.
Okay.
Like effectively what the game tries to do is it gives you like this randomized almost roguelite type of play where you become like a certain class, you can play with different weapons, you can find other weapons and other classes as you explore, but you have to also be very aware of what's going on around you because like what is like in this jungle area is different than in this like more dystopian sci-fi setting that they have or this like medieval castle like setting. And they really do a good job of each individual world being its own thing with enough like things kind of tying them together in the overall plot. Like I genuinely enjoy the game like front to back. I think it's leagues better than Remnant from the Ashes 1. But I love in 2 where you can multi-class, which I don't think you could do in the first game.
So it's not switching classes, it's like combining classes.
So it's more like you get one class at the start and then you'll get a second class that you can do also. Like I ran a Challenger Alchemist build I think on my first playthrough where it was essentially like a very like get in there shoot shotguns type of thing, but then the alchemist has more of these healing type of properties to help you constantly be able to stay in the fight longer, and you can mix and match like I think there's like 10 classes or something like that. And each one kind of does things really well and differently enough that you can actually go into a new playthrough and then try it out in another capacity. So like if I want to be, hang on, I gotta pull up a list because I don't remember all of them. Challenger Alchemist is the only two that I offhand remember because of the fact that I picked those specifically because I'm like, ooh, fight, yes.
So it's kind of like to make a connection. It's kind of like Dragon Quest 3 in a sense because in that game you have to make your party and everyone, you assign everyone a class, but there's a,
Mhm.
a point in the game where you can swap your like all your other party members classes to a different like job, but they get to keep all the knowledge and all the experience they have from their previous job. So
Mhm.
they get to keep all that stuff that they've done and start learning new things. They just start over from level 1, but because you're later in the game and they already have all that knowledge, it's like they catch up back to where they were pretty quickly in this new role.
Yeah, and Fire Emblem is also kind of in that same boat because like in some of the games you can actively like have like Three Houses is probably the best example. You can have them essentially multi-class. So it's like and there's actually some benefit to them multi-classing also because you can have them be like here's like these four classes they start out with and then as you level one up they go into the next level of classes and then the next one and then the next one, but what benefits them is if you kind of in some cases combine their classes so that a you can get perks from mastering the classes, but also weapon proficiencies are for certain classes better than others. So like say if you are a mage but you want them to also be proficient in lances, you would probably put them as a fighter so they can start getting lance proficiency a little bit better. And it doesn't have to like be the full on I need an S rank in it. As you get further into the tier list of classes, they have like what was the one? There's like Holy Knight, for example, which is like the top one of the top tier classes in the game technically. And you have to be proficient in horse riding, you have to be proficient in lances, and you have to be proficient in white magic. So you have to find ways to be able to become proficient in it, whether it's in battle or going through the class systems, or you can do it outside of it and they become proficient in classes as they're learning from week to week.
Mm, I see.
And like I think if I remember right, holy knights don't need that high of a lance proficiency in order to get there. So you're more focusing on the writing and the white magic to be in there and then just essentially keep having them fight with lance over time and then eventually you'll get there. Cuz like there's also the problem of like when you're doing them in like the outside classes like in the game, they can fail the test to actually get into it unless they hit those proficiencies like 100%.
Ooh, that's
So like
interesting.
so what it's nice is like they give you the proficiency of like okay, you can go for this class. You do have like some level up in it, but you can't guarantee a full 100% unless they hit the base requirements for them. So like say if my lance is like at a D plus, not a C, I could still go for it even if it's not a fully perfect thing. It might just be more in like a 80 to 90% pass rate and you can still get the class which will still give you all those plus the proficiencies that you want for them. It's not a guarantee though, because you still have to like at least raise them to some degree so that you have a better chance of at least passing. Like I would say like not going anything if they're like going for a class you want, but it's like less than 75, I wouldn't risk it.
Okay.
Okay, so back to Remnant 2 though. There's 14 different classes and all of them do different things. And what's nice is it's also a multiplayer game. You don't have to play by yourself. You can, which I did, but you can play with others and you can essentially mix and match who is what classes in order to kind of cover your bases better. Like for me, I was a challenger alchemist in this like first playthrough I did, which is more targeting it's like close range, durable, hard to kill style of fighting, but then also giving me utility and ally buffing and support stuff as well. or if I want to be like a hunter and a we'll say ritualist. Hunters are really good at like sniping. They're the long range precision damage, trying to hit critical weak spots. And then the ritualist is also more focused on status effects and AoE damage, that kind of thing.
Okay.
So you can have this like way to be able to kind of like mix and match classes as you see fit to your play style. Like there are ones that work better than others, but overall, like you have a lot of freedom with it.
You get to really be you get to choose what you really want. But I can definitely see though, because it already sounds like it'd be fun in single player, but if you are really planning this out with friends that you have,
Hmm.
you could become a super powerful party if you got like, okay, I like, I want to be the tank here, and I've got, the proper party for that, or I've got the proper class for that and the weapon. But my friend over here likes, they'd rather be more of a sniper type character, so that just kind of works out. We're filling in the niches we have here, and you could be a really super powerful group as a result of it.
Right. For me, I genuinely love this game with or without people to play with. I would definitely play it again at some point with a person. Like I think because I think it's like you can have three people in a lobby at one time. But what's nice is like it gives you a challenge too because as you add more people, you also increase how like hard the game is, so to speak. Not like difficulty, but like there's more HP, there's more enemies in some cases, like stuff like that. So like it's not just like, oh, we have three of us, we're gonna plow through this. It's like, no, we're gonna give you a challenge that's worth three people's worth, basically.
They're going to make sure it's proportionate to the group that you have.
Right. But yeah, Remnant 2, definitely the game of the year for me, for personal game of the year. Potionomics was really good. I enjoyed that. But like the only gripe I had with it is very limiting because you have basically 50 days to not lose your uncle's potion shop. But like I love the type of game that it is. It's like this deck building game meets this like alchemy style of selling potions type of thing. There's like dating sim elements into it that are really cool, like because you can literally get to know all these characters, but you can also like you don't have to have like actual relationships with them. You can actively just be no, we're friends and still max out the relationship versus like, Persona where you max out the relationship because you want to be dating them versus you have the choice in this game.
That's cool. I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
But there's a hard cap as to like this is the end, and it sounds like you like it doesn't have any mode where it's just like endless.
They do now. They did do like a more updated version, I think last year, which I still haven't bought. And actually part of it was they added a new option for one of the people you can make a relationship with, which is a literal loan shark.
All right.
Like I think it's like the third boss in the game if I remember right, but basically he is a literal shark humanoid that loans you money at a certain point and you have to beat him in the contest that like I'll get to that point in a second, but you have to beat him in the contest in order to successfully pay off the loan. It's a weird thing. But basically like your whole thing is like you get 10 days to try to make these specific potions so that you can have these for a contest every like 10 days or so. And every time you succeed, you get money, but you also have to like earn money organically as you're selling potions. You have to craft new ones because certain people want them. And then the real kicker is the haggling. That's the one that really gets
Ooh.
it. The whole game's like main mechanics are basically you're crafting potions, but you're also trying to haggle to get the best price to get the most money from them. Because like in the weirdest way, it's a deck builder game on top of it.
This
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 game,
is the perfect marriage of a lot of things that you like. You talked about
yes,
deck
this is
building
part of the reason I
earlier.
loved it. It's got a good story. It's a deck builder. It's a sim. Like it's really, really doing everything really well from my perspective. And I only put it down below Remnant 2 was only because of the cap at the time. Like, there is an endless mode now that you can do, which is great. So I'm sure at some other point I'll do that. But like when I was trying to achievement hunt on this, hang on, I gotta pull that one up.
Well, while you're pulling that up, I just want to point out I've brought up 2D Sonic a bunch of times now these last 2 episodes, and now this is the second episode where you're talking about simulator games to an extent.
Well, yeah. But yeah, I have 27 of 30 achievements done, and I am only missing 3. 2 of them I know what they are, which is do not pursue a romantic relationship with a character, which that's fine. It's easy enough. And
Mhm.
then the other one is max the relationship with 10 characters in one playthrough. There are 10 characters. How am I supposed to do this in 50 days?
You know, you just gotta be a 5-day Casanova.
No, like you don't have to max them out relationship wise. You can do this in one go. I just don't know what the last relation or the last achievement is, excuse me.
Ooh, it's a mystery one. Watch,
Oh,
it's something boring that's just like, get all the other ones.
actually, it is a lot funnier than it should be. So the main character Sylvia has this stress level, and you can decide whether or not to like try to reduce her stress. But like what's cool about the haggling portion of it is that all of the deck types that you have all play into different types of things when it comes to it. Some are more focused on like you want to have more like people skills. One's more focused on enchanting potions. One's talking about like you do better while you're stressed. Like it's a very elaborate game that takes a lot of time and effort to kind of go through, but it's a really well done game and I absolutely adore it. And to give you context, I played 90 hours of this game when I beat it, so there is really no stops on this train here.
That's a lot of time.
It's a lot of time, and I do intend to hopefully 100% that game at some point, but that's aside the point. And to kind of wrap this one up quick, Marvel Midnight Suns is a much better game than it lets on. Like, I think a lot of people were scared at the fact that it's like, oh, this is a deck builder game. It's like, it is, but also it's not like it's bad. It kind of is like this mix of a deck builder game meets a strategy game, kind of a la Fire Emblem. Like I really liked it. My big gripe with it is it's such a dragged out story. Like there are really good points in the story. I'm not faulting it there because there are some things you have to actively, tell in a longer duration of time in this. But it just goes on for way too long. I think that like I could definitely understand why people were absolutely like, yeah, this took a bit. Like it was like 83 hours and there's like all these exploration things. If you cut out the exploration stuff, it probably would have been a much quicker game, which I would have preferred honestly. It's still good, but like proceed with caution is basically all I know.
Okay. I mean, sometimes that's just how it goes, you know? Which I think is a perfect segue into beginning 2024, uh, because some of these are like for me with my release of the years, I talk about like I hardly pick any games. So some of those ones I don't hardly play any new games. So it's like uh, some of them ended up having to be like more of a well, proceed with caution, like you said on this one, because I just didn't play a lot of new stuff. And one of those, for example, that I nominated is this Nintendo World Championships NES edition. It's just a bunch of challenges, like for some NES games, which is fun. You know, I played it; it was perfectly fine. It's a budget game. It's $30 to download it, but it's like, dang nabbit, I need to play more brand new games in the year that they come out.
I mean, I kind of get in that same boat too, so I definitely understand that. I only had 3 from my release of the year, so I get it.
But my winner ended up being a late release that I've been chipping away at along the last few weeks here, and that is the new Mario and Luigi Brothership. And man, I cannot believe that it was almost 10 years between new entries in this series.
But we got one, and that's what counts.
And one thing that was really affirmed to me in the past year, and we're going to discuss this definitely in the next episode, and a little bit shortly, is I think Mario and Luigi's the better Mario RPG. I, this is like it's like Brothership is a quality RPG, but it's got some things with it where it's like I can tell these are new people doing this because they've made some choices that it's like there's a lot of fresh new stuff that I really like about it. But I also have done some things that I'm just like, I don't know why you guys did this way because like there's nothing wrong with the old way that it was done. That was perfectly fine.
Well, and
And it's just kind of
I
weird.
think it's because Alpha Dream got. I think didn't they go bankrupt or something? Like,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, right. So it's like, no, I understand that it's like it's new people doing it, but sometimes it's just like, you can look at the way it was done and it wasn't broke for a reason. Like, I think the giant one, and this is I mean, it sounds like a nitpick, but it can be a big deal. In
Hmm.
battle, when you're selecting moves, you don't do so for Luigi with B,
Hmm.
which again sounds very, very minor. And obviously, if this is your first game in the series, like it's just gonna make sense. But like everything in previous games for Luigi was always done with B, and there's a bunch of stuff in this game where Luigi still does things with B. So having him select moves with A, it can just get kind of confusing. Uh, I'm kind of early into the story, but it's like I'm enjoying it fine. I don't think it's like super emotionally groundbreaking yet, but when you're less than 20 hours in, it's tough to say. So it might get to points later on where it's like I'm getting really hit in the feels with how things are going. I think the big thing I would just like to change about it is I wish it was a little snappier. It kind of drags, but that's been a problem with all the Mario and Luigi games. So it's just like, that's it's just kind of how it goes sometimes.
Sure.
So quality game. I'm definitely gonna do what I can to finish it, but I want to play more new stuff. What do you have for your release of the year nominees and winner?
So I had three because they were the three that like I could only really think of that came out this year that I played a decent amount of time in, and that was in order probably Helldivers 2, Marvel Rivals, and Balatro. Um, this year was kind of a odd year for certain games. Like I wasn't expecting to enjoy Helldivers 2 and Marvel Rivals as much as I do in terms of like live servicey games as a ex League of Legends player of like over 12 years or whatever it was. But weirdly enough, of the new games on this list, Balatro is my pick.
I remember you singing praises of it a little bit in our last episode.
So I'll kind of go down the list in order of how I have them. Marvel Rivals, I really enjoy. Feels like it feels like old school Overwatch right now, and I really appreciate that because like it's not that toxic of a thing. I don't feel obligated that I have to go play against people. I can just play bot games and I'm fine because I can still earn the in-game stuff if I want to through that. That's what I really appreciate. Is it's like it doesn't force me into playing with people that I necessarily want to. Or like if I don't feel like doing ranked, I'm just here to make Star Lord go and shoot people. That's it. Um Helldivers 2, I really like the PvE element of it, and I really enjoy playing it. But it really kind of fell off after the whole debacle with Sony earlier in this year.
Yeah,
And
that can put a damper on things, doesn't it?
it's not like it's inherently a bad game. It's still really good, and I'm glad that it got the uptick in it with the new release that came out with it. I haven't done anything with it since that update came out, but it's makes me happy because I genuinely think that's a game that should survive long term. But I definitely understand like why people don't necessarily go back to it either. And then Balatro is the one that I would pick for this year. And I will say this. Balatro is such a deceptively simple game, but it really hits that gamble portion that makes you like almost get really excited about it because it's this weird mix of strategy, luck, and just the good old fashioned ooga booga numbers go up mentality that I absolutely adore. Like, so to give you context on it, you're given a deck of, like a traditional deck of playing cards at the beginning. Your goal is to get as many chips, or in this case, points, that it is asking for. So, like, the first level is like 300. So, you have to put together essentially poker hands in order to get them to that chip counter. And as you progress, you can make changes. So, what you can do is you can get a various amount of jokers that all have different abilities. And as you play them, certain ones become more prevalent and others are very like, okay, I don't know what this is, but whatever. Um, but what I appreciate about it is that there's this freedom and it's like every decision is mine to make and I don't feel bad necessarily unless I lose. And it's not from a man, this is bull crap. It's oh, I guess I just didn't optimize. Whatever. That's fine. Um but what I appreciated is like you can also try to like mix and match the jokers. You can improve the jokers in some cases to give them boosts and bonuses of different types, or in some cases, there's let's call it the negative uh, buff essentially, which is instead of you getting like a multiplier or a chip counter, you get to add an additional joker into your pool of jokers because you can only have five initially. But if you get a negative joker, it still retains its like attributes of what it does, but it gives you an extra slot in the Jokers so you can add a new one later. And I have seen some insane runs when it comes to that. I'm literally just trying to get all the decks unlocked right now, and that is already proving to be a challenge. Um, but one of my favorite runs that I like to do is we had this. I don't know. I don't remember. I don't think we won, but Ash and I were playing this one version where we had two jokers specifically. One was uh you need four cards played and it improves every single time you play a four card hand, whether it's, two pair or a four of a kind or something like that. But then we got another joker that says you only need four cards for straights and flushes.
Hmm. That makes things
And
easier.
it does. And what you can also do in the game that I should have mentioned way earlier is you can change your deck as you progress. So, what you're able to do is you can actively decide to improve cards in your deck with like different bonuses and like attributes. So, like, they'll add more chips, they'll add a seal that gives you something. If you do X, then Y kind of thing, or you can even add duplicates of certain cards if you are desperately wanting to add more of them in there. There's like packs where you can just get a playing card, or you can even like get these like tarot cards where some of them will allow you to change a card in your deck into another card that already exists in the hand that you have.
Ooh, that's neat.
There is so much elaborate stuff with this game that I cannot stop singing its praises. I have bought the game already, I think, three or four times. Three of them were Christmas gifts, and one of them was for me because I genuinely love this game.
That's high praise, you know? I mean, I remember, like, when I remember seeing the reveal for it, and I was like, "Okay, I mean, this looks kinda interesting," but I never picked it up, and then it just became this huge thing. Like, people really, really like this game.
And the best part about it is it's like you can get so lost into it that you kind of forget. Like, I played for like 4 hours one time. I did not realize it until I put the game down. And like at the same time, you can always it could be essentially the equivalent of like a cup of coffee or something where you just do a run and just put it down for the day. That's fine too. But like it's so highly addictive. on like trying to be better or build a really good deck to get there. Like I definitely prefer certain ways of it over others, but like I do just genuinely like trying to build this really interesting deck in some capacity. And like they also allow for you to unlock jokers by meeting certain criteria in the game during a run. Like you need 30 cards that are all hearts in your deck for one of them, for example. Like it's so difficult to do that in some cases, but like if you're able to get it to work, you're going to do good.
I would tend to think so, yeah.
Yeah. But like I highly recommend it. Like it's a $15 game. There's no real excuse to like sit there and be like, "Yeah, I could play this, but I don't have 15 bucks." It's like for $15, which technically speaking, I have bought it for $60 because I've given it to 3 other people. And I still don't feel like I wasted money because straight up it is such an enjoyable experience. Like from the euphoria of finishing a run to the frustration of, man, I screwed it up here somewhere, or I
Mhm.
just got dealt a bad hand, whatever. Like I'm still upset. Earlier this week, I had a run. I lost the round by 8 points.
And how big is a differential usually when you lose?
Probably a few thousand because like it kind of goes up like
Wow.
it kind of goes up like exponentially with like the number that you need to hit. Like it starts out early like in like the 300 to like 2000 like for the first couple of levels, but then it like gets into 6 digits near the end and it just goes up from there. There are literal like runs where people have actively been like, oh cool, I can definitely do this, or like I've seen I think a run that had like 20 some jokers at one point because they had so many negatives and they had also the same types of jokers for whatever reason.
So to lose by 5 is like
Yeah. It it,
or
it
8,
was
excuse me.
it was such a kick in the knackers like that I was like, because I think it was like deep into the run too. I think it was like 100,000 or 110,000 I needed, and I was like just under it at the very minimum. I was literally 8 chips from succeeding, and then just nothing. But yeah,
Wah, wah,
Balach.
wah, wah.
But yeah, Balatra is my pick for this year, 100%. Like Marvel Rivals, Helldivers 2, great games. Would play them more often if I had more friends to play with online. But Balatro is like such a fun time because like I can play it by myself, I can play it with my girlfriend, and we will literally sit there and just lose hours because we're so enveloped in like what is the right thing that we need to build right this minute with this deck.
Well, and it's another deck builder, and you enjoy your deck building, I've
Card
noticed.
games are just fun for me.
Indeed, they are. Let us move to our personal game of the years.
Mhm.
So I have it's actually a little bit longer list than I think you've had in most years. I tried to keep it. Have tried to keep them relatively short in previous years, but let's see. I've got in here. I've got Pikmin 1. I already discussed that. I mean, great strategy game. A little stressful, but in the end, I mean, geez, I got it done in. I don't remember how long it or how many days it took me to beat, but it's just like it's a game that I thought like I knew I was going to be able to play it because obviously I'd beaten every other mainline game in the series to that point. But even then, for some reason, it still seemed like, am I going to be able to do this? And I did, and it was fine. So
Mhm.
uh, it's just one of those deceptively stressful games. It feels like it will be stressful, but it's not. It'll be fine. If and because you got 30 days, and 30 days is plenty of time to beat that game. So I enjoyed it. It's just more Pikmin-y goodness. Paper Mario. I went through and finally played the original Paper Mario in 2024. That's my topic for next time. So I really don't want to discuss it here. Uh, at the end of the day, good game. I'm not quite as sold on it being like this amazing game like some other people have for it, though. I just don't enjoy it quite that much, but we'll discuss that next time. Chocobo GP, that is a game that I picked up when I visited my father when he still lived in Colorado Springs, Colorado, because a local yokel game shop we went to, and this might have been when we went up to Denver, had a physical copy of the European version of the game. Because it never got a physical release here, because they wanted to originally go all free to play with it, and people were like, "Yeah, we're not gonna go for that." Uh, so I have all the content in it because it's all the cartridge, and it's a quality racer, but it's still just like it's a Mario Kart clone at the end of the day. So it's tough for me to call it my personal game of the year. Sonic Origins Plus, played all the games in it. It was fun. I'll try to stop talking about it. I played through Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga in anticipation for Brothership, and I really honestly think it's a game that's kind of a victim of overhyping. I don't think it's as bad as the original Paper Mario is for it, but it's like I did enjoy it a lot, but there are times where it's just like it kind of drags on for a little bit. I don't hot take here. I don't think it's as like gut bustingly funny as some people say it is. Like it's got some good laughs, but I never found myself like barreled over laughing at it, and some people say it's a hilarious game, but I just don't quite see it in that same way.
Hmm.
And I played through both games, the Ace Attorney Investigations collection. It's amazing to finally have a proper official localization of Investigations 2. And I genuinely think people kind of sleep on the original Investigations. I don't think it's nearly as bad of a game as people say it is. Uh, I enjoyed it a lot. But my big winner is kind of a cop out because I went to the whole developer, but if I had to pick a single winner, I have one here, and that is Sing. That is Cing, because I started 2024 playing the re-release of the Another Code games, and
Hmm.
I really deeply enjoyed those. They're not like super amazingly groundbreaking, like change your world types of adventure games, but they're just like quality, cozy little games up until you start getting into like there's some creepy sci-fi stuff going on here as it goes on. And I had a good time with them. I haven't gone back to replay any of them, but I would be interested in doing so. There's only really one game from that bunch that I didn't enjoy as much, which is why I also put it in my backlog MVP, which is the original Trace Memory, which is what the first Another Code was like titled as in North America. Uh, I don't really care for some of the changes they made to the localization in the North American version. And it's not really glitchy. It's just like some of the puzzles don't work as well on the original DS as like some of the remade puzzles or like the new puzzles in the Switch version work a lot better. And I just didn't really feel much desire to keep playing it through. But it's like I know I want to finish it because I played the remake and it was good. Uh, but I mean, where Sing really stood out for me, I finally played Hotel Dusk, Room
Yeah,
215,
buddy.
and I played Last Window. I genuinely don't know between the two which I like better, but I think I'm gonna give it up to Hotel Dusk. I mean,
That's probably the correct choice as someone who's only played that one of the games you listed, which now means I have many more games I got to go look for.
well, here's the good news for you.
Hmm.
Another Code, the Recollection one, has a demo on the Switch,
Hmm.
so you can play the first couple parts of the first game on it.
I
It's
have
a
seen that one like at multiple stores, and I have been tempted to buy it multiple times. I'm like, I'll get it later. I'll get it later. It's like, I gotta play it at some point.
I would definitely start with a demo. It's very hit or miss for some people. Some
Mm.
people really like it. Some people really think it's like, it's okay. I just happen to really like it. I think because you enjoy adventure games, you will end up enjoying it quite a bit. But it's not always everyone's favorite. But I mean, Hotel Dusk is very Ghost Trick like in the sense that it's just like it comes out of nowhere being phenomenal, right?
Oh yeah, I played the OGDS one. I haven't never finished it, so I won't ask you to ruin it for me
Oh
because
no,
that
I
is
won't.
that's one of those games that's on my backlog. I need to actively finish now.
Another way in that it's kind of like Ghost Trick, not to like really spoil everything because it's kind of obvious as you're going through it. Like this is how these adventure games kind of try to work. Is clearly every character is involved in this bigger mystery that's going on here.
Hmm.
Even though they're not like not all of them are like super extremely directly tied to Kyle Hyde's own like mission that he has of finding his former police partner Bradley, but they all have like, oh, there's a reason they're at this hotel, and there's they know certain secrets about people, and it all kind of comes together at the end. Really, really, really good game. Uh, and Last Window, the sequel, it takes place at Kyle Hyde's apartment building that he lives in. And in that case, you're interacting with all of his neighbors who all in some way also have their own ties to a mystery with that building. So I mean, it kind of in that sense is like, well, they're sort of retreading Hotel Dusk in that way in a new building, but you're in a way bigger building. It's a totally different type of mystery. Just both like excellent, excellent, excellent games. I cannot wait to uh, feel the desire again to replay them, especially because I played Hotel Dusk twice because it has like a new game plus kind of at the end. It's really not that different. It's 99% the same game, but you get some slight differences. Last Window does not, though. But one of the really, really cool things about Last Window is you play the game, and it plays just like Hotel Dusk, but you also, every time you finish a chapter, you get a novelization of the chapter. So there's a whole book included with the game that's like, about the story of the game, and it's written by the author character in Hotel Dusk. Now, if that isn't some world building, I don't know what is. Uh, and it dives into like Kyle Hyde as a character, and the things that happen in the book too. I should point out are slightly influenced by choices you make in the game. So you can
Mm.
have your own. I mean, there's only so many choices you can make, right? But it's like based on your playthrough, you get your own copy of Last Window, as opposed to this is just what the story is, and that's what happens. So I can't sing enough praises sing about these games. I enjoyed them a ton. I didn't necessarily have gigantic expectations going into them, but it's like when you see how things come together, it's just it's phenomenal, and it's a tough one to describe because like I don't want to spoil things for people, but it's just so darn good. Uh, let's move on to your list. Obviously, we discussed your winner earlier because we were both super hyped about Ghost Trick, but you have plenty more games as well.
Yeah, and I'll try to be quick on these because like there's some of these that it's like it's not really like you need to talk to them that long. It's just a matter of like, yeah, these are really good games. Go play them. What are
I
you
liked
doing?
it a lot.
Yeah. So to kind of also go into it, personal game of the year also had Balatro. Ghost Trick we talked to death. Balatro we talked to death. Both very good games. Like I have never been happier to pick up a game than probably those two, at least from this year. Um, Yakuza Kiwami was probably one game that I was so genuinely happy to finally have my toe dipped in the water on this because I've heard great things about the series. I bought it cheap on Steam a long time ago. I own literally like the six main entries, Yakuza Zero, and like all the spin-offs that are slowly accruing, all the spin-offs that are coming. There's like almost 20 games, I think, in the series now, something like that, between like Yakuza, like a Dragon, and Judgment. there are so many things in that like bubble that I'm like, yeah, I'm playing through this series at some point, and I'm very happy about that. But like, it's such a good game because it was like when you get into the actual main plot, it is the most serious game I think I played this year. And then I go into the side content, and it is the most unserious game after that. I am
Tonal
literally
whiplash.
tonal whiplash, yes, but it's in a good way because like I have literally got like this woman or this like little girl who like lost her mom early, and she's like relying on you, and then in the same breath I'm running to a karaoke bar. Or like I am beating up these like goons that are just like in the middle of the street because they just saw me like around the street. I didn't pick a fight with them. They picked the fight with me, and they regretted this decision very fast. But like it just makes it so entertaining with like what the game can do. Like it's so immersive also. Like you really get to appreciate a lot of like the culture that Japan has in that game. And it being an older game is really interesting because it's like the game has like a prequel moment that kind of like illustrates what's going on in the game, and then it does this like 10-year time skip after you get out of prison. Like that you basically are a byproduct of time that has got to get used to what the world has changed while he was away. Like, and there's all these like more serious like tonal things. Like I could go into it, but I don't want to go too in depth on it. It was really good. I loved it. 100% would play it this again at some point. I would not recommend trying to complete it though, because that is a nightmare in its own right. Because there's Steve achievements, and then there is also a completionist list built into the game. No, do not do that. I tried to. I got 70% done and said, "F this." There is a certain point where I can only sing so much karaoke and go race little miniature RC cars before I really sat there and I'm like, do I really need this to finish the game?
Right, right. This it gets a little ridiculous, but honestly, I think in that sense, it's a good it's a good approximation, I think, of what it would be like
Yeah,
to, not that I would recommend this for anyone. Obviously, this is not a good idea, but it's like if you were someone who is locked up because you're a criminal and you missed all these things that happened along the way in the world,
yeah,
and now you see all this new stuff. Of course, you'd get into like, well, here's the things I need to do, but also like, yeah, I want to try out the RC cars because I've never seen the RC cars before. Yeah, I want to go to the karaoke bar because it's like that's like a new thing, and I never tried that. It just
hmm
seems so interesting. So that's got to be a very interesting narrative perspective to have.
oh yeah, and like it feels weird because it's like you can almost go from turn on the serious plot points and actually like ingest what's all happening in the world, but then you can turn that switch off almost immediately. You're like, cool, I'm gonna go and play this card game with these kids at the arcade, or I'm gonna go bowl for like 30 minutes. And like there's no like real reasoning why you have to do the side stuff realistically. Like there are some benefits in some cases because like you'll get points to like unlock shit like later, but like oh I can't remember if I was so good about not swearing for all this. My bad. um but like, and I also do love the character. I think it's what is it, Mijima? He's essentially like your rival who will literally go out of his way to fight you because he wants to make sure that you did not lose a single step. And the funniest part is they built his fights in as a byproduct to level up your skills. So you have to go kick his ass in order to get new skills.
Oh, that's great.
But the funniest thing is like this, like he has multiple fighting styles, which you also do too, and that's really cool. Combat is great in that game, but like he also has this, so you have to be aware of how he's fighting and figure a way around it. Technically,
And that's how you get your new skills.
yes, it's 100%. Like it's so much better of a game than I was expecting it to be, and I'm so happy that I played it.
and now you've just got a whole sea of games to play right after that.
If I'm lucky, I'm going to get through at least one game a year and I'll be content with just that. Unfortunately, I don't know how many games that means because there is also a new one, I think, that comes out later this year where Mijima is the playable character. He has amnesia and is apparently a pirate in Hawaii. I don't understand this franchise and there's so much I need to get into.
There's a lot to learn, it sounds
I
like.
have to know why Mijima's a pirate.
You know, so he just wanted to have a Jolly Roger, and it blossomed from there.
All right. So anyway, Hi-Fi Rush is my next one. That was the one that I beat really early in the game, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. The only reason it was not on release of the year was because it did not release this year. But 100% worth the price of admission on that game. I love the music. I love the combat. I love the story. It is so unserious and fun that I can absolutely go back to that every year and not feel bad about playing that game because it's not a waste of time to me. It was incredible from start to finish. Everyone who even has a semblance of rhythm should play that game, or at the bare minimum, watch someone play it because it is fantastic.
I've heard a lot of good stuff about it. I've heard a lot of people praise it. I do have some enjoyment for rhythm games, but I just haven't, gotten around to it. I'm hoping to eventually put it on my list of something to play because, like, people keep
Bump it
praising
up.
it, and it's for a
Bump it
reason.
up. You definitely should bump it up.
You think I would enjoy it even if I weren't a rhythm fan?
So here's the reason I like it. The combat is built into the rhythm of the music. So like every stage that you go into, they build the music essentially kind of like how Edgar Wright does his movies, where the music is a key factor in that game. And you actively get better at combat the more on beat you are. But you don't necessarily have to be on beat in order to enjoy the game. You can literally just, go full on ham fist and call it a good time. But like it gets better if you are able to stay on rhythm. And it's like you don't have to hit it like every 1, 2, 3, 4. Because you can literally like do combos where it's like you hit it 1, 2, don't hit anything on 3, and then hit on 4, and it still is enjoyable. Like it's a much more elaborate combat system with the rhythm that they built in. And as someone who I beat Crypt of the Necrodancer a while back, and I really enjoyed that. This is like the next step of that, where the combat is much more intricate versus like, oh, I have to move on the beat and attack on the beat like Crypt of the Necrodancer had. This is like much more elaborate, but still simple enough for someone to understand if they're picking it up for the first time.
Well, and that's not necessarily a critique of Necrodancer. It's just, that's a 2D top-down game as opposed to a full-blown 3D game. They're just
Yeah.
very different types of games.
Mhm. All right, and I'll try to the last four I have. I'll try to plow through these as quick as possible. Grifflands, great card builder game that has a very interesting take on it where it's focusing on like the story of the character you pick on, but then it focuses on like trying to build a deck whether you want to be diplomatic or you can be full on I'm going to punch people in the face and think about the repercussions later. Um but like it was a really well done game. 100% like that one, but we're establishing something pretty quick. I like card games.
I've noticed this episode has been the card game episode.
Look, if you give me cardboard, I'm going to be thrilled if it has numbers on it. But yeah, Grifflands was a great pickup. I'm glad I finally got that off my backlog. Angerfoot was another game that I believe I don't think it released this year. Maybe it did. Um, but I remember like it was one of those games where I watched Jacksepticeye of all people play it like one time, and it was such an experience from start to finish. And I was so happy about it because the game is literally just this good old fashioned, like essentially like first person beat 'em up where all you do is kick bad guys in the face. That's it.
All right.
But like the music slaps. Oh yeah, it released this July. Yeah, this absolutely was a great pickup game. I don't feel bad for buying it. It was a nice, quick, fast game too, which is really nice. Because yeah, it took me less than 20 hours to beat this one, and that was off of really small sessions.
Well,
But
and what did we say last time about short games? Short games can be good. They don't need to be hundreds of hours long.
yeah, I'm gonna skip this one for now, but I want to get into Sam and Max Save the World because that was a great game. It was actually the remaster of the Telltale game that they did like years ago, which I found out. We found a Switch copy actually at a local game store, and I bought it, and it was great because it's like these episodic like Sam and Max episodes, but like this was like the first real time I've played a Sam and Max game. I've watched some in the past, so I got to experience it firsthand, and the level of like going from point A to point B is so insane that I absolutely love this franchise and I cannot wait to play more of it.
Wouldn't you know who also has a physical copy of that and the sequel? It's right
I
here,
do
me,
I do
myself,
need to
and
get
I.
I do need to get the sequel. I'm very excited about that. But like have you played Sam and Max yet or no?
So, I have to admit, I'm a little bit of a cheater. I have not played them, but I've watched them all a couple of times because they're just interesting stories, you know? They're funny, they're hilarious. I love the jokes in them. That's not to say that they're bad as games. Obviously, they're great as games, but I mostly enjoy them because they're funny.
Oh yeah. Like it's such an unserious game that I can absolutely like get on board with it. Like it tries to be serious where it like is throwing all this terminology that like I don't know what half of what that sentence meant, but all right. Um but
It's great.
it's always funny when you can tell me that it's like, yes, the freelance police are going to be sitcom stars and have to fight the Lincoln Memorial, and there is a train of thought in it. I'm not gonna tell you what it is, though. You have to play it yourself to find out. I literally told one of our coworkers actually at the station about it, and I told him I'm not gonna give you like the full context of it, but the following events do all happen in this game, and I gave him exactly those, and he had no idea how to fathom that.
Uh, when I was in college, similarly,
Mhm.
so in my second to last semester of the year, I'm in this class about um, politics and literature because I'm just that kind of nerd. And every day, the guy who, so I mean, he wasn't a professor, he was still like a teaching assistant at the time, but every day for the class, he would start at some point with, he'd like, he'd be playing music and he'd take some music requests. So he's like, if you guys have anything, if you have any thoughts of like things and like in some way connect to the books that you're reading, that'd be cool. So one day, so we're reading, I mean, it's really more people probably read it in high school, but we read it for this class. We're reading, um, oh my god, why am I blanking on this book right now? Oh, it's Kurt Vonnegut. It's the Dresden book. Shoot, what is the name of it? I can't believe I have to look this up because it's not like it's not one of the most famous novels of all time or anything that is read in tons and tons of classes. Slaughterhouse Five. That's the book where it's about the World War II and nuclear war and all that stuff.
Okay.
And so I'm like, let's play the song from Sam and Max Save the World when they get access to the war room in the White House. Because it's all about the song is all it's a show tune all about glorifying war. And he's like, honestly, I think Vonnegut would have loved this song because Kurt Vonnegut was very anti-war, and this is and in a lot of ways what the book does is it like kind of cartoonishly glorifies war because it's showing about like how people can just really be drug into thinking like, oh, war is great and whatever, and that's a bit essentially what the song is largely about too, because it's just like they're being like, war is so great because all these we make a ton of money and we get to send a ton of people out, and this isn't to say one thing or another anyway about the issue of war. Like obviously, wars are complicated issues. You have to take each one in on its own. But if you're Kurt Vonnegut and you have the experience of seeing what happened with like the atomic bombs and World War II and all that stuff, you would probably find it very on the nose because that's how, in your mind, that's how people look at it. So I will always remember that with Sam and Max Save the World as well. In addition to just like how it's a hilarious game, how it's like you see people like how people react to it in real life, and it's very interesting.
Yeah, and then the last game, this is a personal game for me. So I played the backyard sports games religiously growing up. And I found out semi recently that a company got the backyard sports rights and are slowly releasing them on Steam because I had just gotten Backyard Baseball 97. I got Backyard Soccer a while back, and I'm so excited about that. They're bringing these games back, and I was playing them again recently, and I'm like, it's like I never left. I'm so happy right now. Like they're simple, like it's an interesting case because like these were games that were designed as sports games, but they were built in a point and click adventure engine.
Hmm.
So the fact that they are as good as they are is fantastic.
It's definitely interesting. It's not something you would expect, and honestly, those first ones are probably some of the best ones because it's like as time went on, it almost seemed like that was more or less all Humongous was able to make, and then they just didn't exist anymore. And so it's not now like new people have to make them, and they went in weird directions. But those classics are classics for a reason. You can't go wrong with a good arcadey sports game.
Yeah, and I think that's why they are as good as they are. It's like as I remember them. Like I played Backyard Baseball 2001 was the one that I played the most growing up, but like I remember the OG Backyard Hockey, I remember the OG Backyard Football, basketball. Like they're really good games. Um but I think the problem became as time went on, things got sold off, and that's where the whole rights thing kind of got into it. And like the company who actually owns the rights now is looking to do more with it than just games. They want to do like a full blown like cartoon series. They want to do like strips. They want to do I think they want to do a movie, I think I heard at some point too. Like they're very um adamant with this time around because I
I
think
mean,
they
that could all be good, but I just worry that they might get out a little over their skis with it.
well, this is just like what they've planned, but like they've only released the two games so far, and I think part of the problem of that is because the other games have pro players in them, so there's probably some rights things that they have to work with the unions of the different sports leagues before they can actively say like, yeah, we can put this out there. Because otherwise, you now have to figure out how to get around that because like there's the sports logos and the licensing of the player names and all this other stuff. It's a whole other thing, but that's a topic for a different day. But the fact that we have the OG backyard baseball and the OG backyard soccer, I'm very happy with just with that alone. But yeah, those are the personal games I think this year that probably meant the most to me. So we're on to backlog.
All right, and I will try to make this relatively short since it's also has some repetition. Trace memories on there. I didn't play it very much, but it's like, man, I enjoyed another code. I really should just sit down and finish it, even if I wasn't totally loving it and getting lost in some places. Actually, that might be my big problem with the game is it doesn't make something super clear where you have to go, which is a problem in an adventure game for sure, considering they're pretty linear games. I want to play through Super Mario RPG. Obviously, as you can tell, I played through two full Mario RPGs in 2024. I started a third one in Brothership, so I'm just kind of on this Mario RPG train. So it's like, well, I've started the SNES version of Super Mario RPG before. I have the Switch one. It's like, I should really sit down and actually finish that game. So it's on my list of games to do. Sonic X Shadow Generations, another really late in the year release, but Uh, I've always wanted to play Sonic Generations, but I never was able to find the time to get around to it. And it's a phenomenal game, or so I hear, and a pretty short game. So it's like I'd really like to play that. And it sounds like the stuff they do with Shadow in it is very interesting. So I want to see what that is like too. Uh, Dragon Quest 2, which leads into 3, the HD 2D version. I've finished the only game in the series I've beaten so far is the original Dragon Quest, which isn't surprising because it's only like 8 hours long.
Mhm.
Basic McBasic RPG. Two, like it's such a weird game because it's like bigger, but it's not really tons and tons bigger. It's just kind of harder, and I find myself like I get into it and then I put it down for a long time, and then it's like I have to figure out exactly what I'm doing. And man, it's such an NES RPG. But I mean, I'm interested in 3. I don't know how I'm gonna fully feel about 3 because it does some of the stuff with RPGs, and I'm not like, I like having my characters just given to me and getting a good story more than like making them. But I'm open to it. It's it's tough to like. I swear, there's like 5 big Dragon Quests that people love. It's like 11, 8, 3, 5, and 4. So it's like I've got to play this one because it's like one of the quintessential ones. So I'm definitely optimistic. I think I'll end up enjoying it, even though I've got some personal like I don't know that I'm gonna love this.
Grievances.
But my big backlog MVP, yeah, grievances maybe is a better word. My big backlog MVP. In fact, I can see myself pretty much dropping Brothership for the moment because of this. After the next episode, when we discuss its prequel, I want to play Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door.
The
Uh,
remake or the OG?
I only have the remake. I don't
Okay.
have the original version. Although I mean they're pretty similar on the whole. They're not like extremely different. Um, and who knows? I'll probably use the nostalgic tunes badge as well to experience the original music during some portions. Try the new stuff, but it's like I finished the original. I gotta play the sequel, and I've been having it sit on my shelf all year. But I've been waiting because I want to talk about how I feel about the original, so I can see when I go into the Thousand Year Door how it addresses some of the issues that I have with it. So that's why it's my backlog MVP of the year. So to summarize, the big winners for Brandon this year: Mario and Luigi Brothership, just sing overall. But if I had to pick a single winner, it's going to be Hotel Dusk, and Paper Mario: The Thousand Year Door for 2024. What's your backlog MVP, or the ones that you just want to play the most?
So I got a few games like that I'm definitely like on board at some point to hopefully finish because some of these are fairly short and then some of them are definitely going to take some time. But probably in order of the ones that I want to probably get to, Fallout New Vegas is on there, mostly because I've heard so much good stuff about Vegas that I need to play it at some point. But it's not high on the list, mostly because like I've never been like the biggest shooter person, but like I'm not against them by any stretch. I do want to experience that, especially since I can make a creature or not creature, a character that's a sub brick intelligence, which that's literally like what they have as part of the special system when you're uh attributing your stats. You can have an intelligence that is at a 1, which is literally described as sub brick. You are
Wow.
stupider than a brick.
And the brick doesn't have a brain.
Exactly. Um, Another one that like I don't know when I'm gonna get around to it is Cassette Beast. I heard it's a really good game that I bought a while back. It's very a la Pokemon, so I'm already in for that one, but I don't know much past that, honestly. But I heard really good things about it, and I'm always a sucker for a good indie game. Which, speaking of, would probably also include Eastward, Pacific Drive. Both I heard are really good games. Eastward I heard is a very elaborate game because like to 100% it, you have to beat like not just the in-game thing, but there's a game in the game that you have to beat in order to get all the achievements.
It can never be easy, can it?
No, but it's very like I've heard comparisons to like Earthbound with this. So it's got a lot of high praise from that. I actually almost bought this physical on Switch a while ago, but I ended up deciding against it. Pacific Drive I heard is a real good atmospheric, weird, like kind of sci-fi-ish game where like you kind of upgrade this like station wagon vehicle into like this more like fantasy sci-fi style of thing. Like I don't know much on it. I've watched some gameplay of it. It looked interesting, so I figured that might be a game I'll probably look into. I'm finishing Dave the Diver this year. I have started that game twice now and gotten very far into it, and I never finish it. And I'm going to finish that game. So help me God, I am going to finish this game. I am going to be the greatest sushi diver that there ever. I don't like the way I phrase that.
You're gonna be the greatest sushi diver that ever was.
No, I just don't like the term sushi diver. That sounds worse than it actually means to be.
Yeah, I suppose you're gonna be the best guy who goes diving for live fish.
There you go. But yeah, Dave the Diver, I want to finish this year. I have it on Switch, I have it on Steam. I'm going to finish it on one of those. I swear to God. Um, I also put I don't not necessarily going to do both of these, one or the other, but I want to finish either Persona 3 or Persona 4. I have only ever played Royal. It is obviously like I've talked the praises of Royal, but like I've heard 3 and 4 are just as good if not better in some cases, so I just want to finish those games so that I can actually get through more of the Persona series. I am fingers crossing that at some point we get Personas 1 and 2 to kind of have the treatment like Persona 3 got with the more up to date gameplay. And I think that will probably eventually happen, just not anytime soon. But I will be beating at least one of those Persona games, I think, this year. That's my goal. And then probably the one that I'm the most excited about, another Atlas game, is Unicorn Overlord. All I know too much on this one is it's Atlas and it has very like Fire Emblem style of combat while having more of like that Atlas style of socialization. So I'm like, all right, I can get behind this. And I was desperately trying to find a physical copy of this game and I got one on the Switch. So I will be beating that game at some point. So help me God. This game is on like the top of my list to play at some point. But I promised myself I would not play it yet until I finish my current Three Houses playthrough. Because like that's right at the end, and I am not going to start another long play where I am going to be basically on this like giant adventure until Fire Emblem is done.
Those darn RPGs are just so long.
It's not my fault. RPGs are such a good style of game, but
Yeah.
I would say the top three I for sure want to get off my backlog this year is Unicorn Overlord, Dave the Diver, and probably Pacific Drive. Oh, I forgot Dredge. I want to beat Dredge at some point. I heard it's really good. I've seen it. It looks really good because it's this like Lovecraftian fishing simulator.
Ooh.
Like it's really well done. I've seen the game. I've like I know what happens in it, but I just want to play it and experience it firsthand. And it sounds amazing to play. Also, I also found out there's like a weirdly a DLC that is with Dave the Diver and Dredge because like characters and fish from Dredge go into Dave the Diver, and it's the weirdest thing.
That's got to be interesting because those are very different looking games, aren't they?
Well, I mean, they still do it in like the Dave the Diver style of like pixelated art, but like I just kind of sat there and just like, what the hell, man? And that's coming from somebody who literally witnessed the Godzilla DLC for Dave the Diver.
It's got some weird crossovers, that's for sure.
It does, but it's funny. But yeah, I'd say for now, like the three that I want to get through is probably going to be Unicorn Overlord, Dave the Diver, probably Pacific Drive, just to get a short one out of the way. Because I heard that's not that long of a game too, which is nice.
All right. Well, and not to influence your list, but it sounds like you got to get Hotel Dusk off your list too.
I gotta finish that game. I almost had that beat too, and I'm just like, I really need to stop stopping games.
Hmm. You will enjoy it when you get to the end. I promise you that.
All right, well, we're not ruining the ending yet for that.
No, I'm not
I will
doing.
geek out with that later at a different date when I finally get around to that. But I probably will finish Soul Silver before I get into Hotel Dusk
All
then.
right. We'll make that an intro topic whenever you've finished the game, I figure, is you're like, oh my god, this was so good.
Yes. Like I am already like I was already really enjoying that game too, but I have this problem of like I start games, I get really into them, and then something comes up, and then I drop it for a little while, and then I just never pick it back up. Like I need to stop that part of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've gotten better this year with it though, so hopefully it'll be better overall.
Well, yeah, I mean, we'll just have to see, right? You know,
I'll
the
just
future
we'll
is
get
not written.
we'll just get to next year's episode this time, and I'm just be like crying, like I didn't finish any of them.
Well, I mean, that's usually how it goes for me, unfortunately, as you've seen. But I think we have reached the end of our episode here. We are pretty much right on the cusp of making this the longest episode I've had. Believe it or not, I have one that's still just like 2 minutes longer, so we might just barely not beat it out. We're getting pretty
I
close.
don't know. We still have the final comments and everything we gotta do.
We just have to find a way to ramble a little bit longer, but I don't have anything else to say about these. I
Yeah.
think we've covered what we have to say. So if you have gotten to the end here, first, thank you for getting through more than 2 hours of us talking. But please do some kind of engagement. You can like the show. Yeah, you can give a comment. You can subscribe to us in your podcast platform of choice or via YouTube. Can't send in a voice message yet. I don't have the speak pipe page set up yet because I don't know. Like the way that it works is, it's like basically like speakpipe.com/ your show name. And I don't know if I can change the link later. So if we decide to change the show name, I'd like to have that finalized before I make the link. But that's on the to-do list. Aside from that, I think that's everything I have. So I am Brandon, and I am signing out here.
And I'm Boom, and I will catch you later.
All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Goodbye.